Today we are kicking off our 2021-22 NHL season previews, and we are kicking things off with the team that we've talked about the most recently, and that's the Montreal Canadiens. They've had a lot of moves. For a team that went to the finals last year, it looks a lot different coming into this year. We'll review their exits, their new players. Will they be better, worse, or where do I see them finishing? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we're kicking off the season previews here today, and our first two teams are actually going to be the Montreal Canadiens and the Carolina Hurricanes. Just given all the recent news between the offer sheet and the trade and everything that's taken place, I just found these two teams to be the most fascinating to look at right now to compare how they did last year compared to what they're going to do this year. They both are teams who had a lot of success last year, but actually look a lot different. So let's take a look here. First, we're going to recap last season quickly, just take a look at how they did overall, and then we're going to look at all the changes and look at what they're going to look like going into this year. So last year, the Montreal Canadiens finished the shortened regular season. Of course, we played a 56-game campaign with a record of 24, 21, and 11 for 59 points, fourth place in the North Division. It got them into the playoffs, and we all know the old saying, once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen, and that's exactly what we saw last year. Obviously, a fourth-place team, squeaks in, and then look to go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, of course, they eventually lost in the finals to Tampa in round 4. They were just completely outmatched in that series, but they certainly really outperformed the other teams in the North to make it to the finals, and certainly had a overall very successful season. Now, their leaders last year were led by Tyler Toffoli, of course, who was coming off a UFA signing, scored 28 goals, 16 assists for 44 points, so he was their goal-scoring leader as well as their points leader. Jeff Petrie led an assist with 30, also tallying 12 goals for 42 points. And Nick Suzuki was their third highest scoring forward and player overall with 15 goals, 26 assists for 41 points, having himself a real solid full campaign after last year, the year before that, in the bubble playoffs. It was really kind of like his coming out party, and he followed that up with another solid performance in the regular season. Now, overall, the Habs didn't do great during the regular season. They scored 159 goals. They allowed 168 goals, both below average in the league, 17th best for goals for, 18th best for goals against, and overall their special teams were not fantastic either. So what do we see for this team this coming year? Well, first off, we're going to take a look at all the exits. There's a lot of players no longer with this team. Now, this Habs team, as I mentioned, has a lot of longtime faces gone. Some of these guys weren't there as long, but still, they're going to be without a lot of veterans and a lot of leadership. They let Tomas Tatar go via free agency, which was not a huge surprise. Tatar became a spare part in the playoffs and didn't really have a role any longer. And looks like as though, you can kind of tell his time with the team was coming to an end. Philippe Deneau, who was an incredibly important piece in their playoff run, shutting down many of the other team's top offensive players, departed via free agency to the LA Kings as well. That's an exit that's going to hurt for sure. We'll discuss who will kind of take on that kind of role moving forward, but Deneau was there a long time. He's been a guy who's been in the Selke Trophy conversations for a while, and ultimately, goes to LA on a pretty rich contract, a bit more money than Montreal was willing to offer, and like I said, it's going to be a big hole to fill. Even though he didn't give you a ton of offense, he was one of the best defensively, which will hurt. I mean, they only had Corey Perry for 1 year, but he had a big impact. He was an absolutely strong warrior in the playoffs. Great leader for the young guys to look up to as well. He signed a 1-year deal. Now he goes and joins Tampa on a 2-year deal. So I think the big difference there is that the Lightning were willing to give him that second year, where Montreal did not. But I think there was also some talk that Tampa might have been his first choices, because I think he got that contract offer pretty quick and had the second year there and didn't really have to think about it too much. He gets to live in the state of Florida, great weather. He's used to living in California for a long time. He gets a very competitive team coming off back-to-back cups. He gets a second year, which most teams wouldn't give. It was a pretty easy decision for him, not to mention the difference in taxes, too, compared from the state of Florida to the province of Quebec. Eric Staal obviously was picked up near the deadline. got off to a slow start, but did pick up and was a better performer during the playoffs. Stahl has not signed anywhere as of yet. I suppose there was a slim chance he could re-sign in Montreal on a real cheap contract. They don't have a ton of cap space, but ultimately here, I don't see that happening, but I guess you never know. Of course, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who ended up going to Carolina on an offer sheet. We all talked about that a lot in the last few days and the last week here leading up to it while we were waiting for Montreal's decision. Of course, the former number 3 overall pick in the 2018 draft completed his entry-level deal and then received the offer sheet, signed it from Carolina, very rich offer sheet at 6.1. Montreal does not match, makes a trade after, and they move on. Defensemen Eric Gustafsson and John Merrill both acquired around the deadline, as well as some depth pieces that ended up playing decent roles in the playoffs. Are both gone. Michael Frolik is gone. Didn't really play much of anything from him. And Shea Weber, I have him down as an exit. He's obviously still with the team and likely will be for the remainder of his contract, but there's a pretty good chance that he's not going to play again. We know for sure he's not going to play this year. So even though he's technically with the Habs, I have him down as an exit because he's not going to be a part of this version of the Habs for this season. And like I said, he may never play again. We'll have to wait and see how surgeries and recovery and everything goes this year and what the future holds for their captain. I don't expect the captaincy to be replaced, at least not this year, not until we reach a point, and if it were to happen, that Weber couldn't compete at all anymore, then I think they will consider it. Until then, he's the captain, and I guess we'll see what happens in that regard. Now, who did they replace all these guys with? They lost a lot of guys. Of course, Christian Dvorak was their most recent trade piece, coming over from Arizona for a first-rounder and a second-rounder. It's a steep price, but it's a player who's still in his mid-20s. Got 4 years of contract left to $4.5 million. Has a decent amount of offense, but a solid two-way player. They're going to rely on him to kind of play that role that Phillip Danault played. I'm not sure that he can do it to that level, at least not yet. Dvorak's not quite at that level on the defensive side of the game. He is a good two-way forward. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not good defensively, but it's hard to be as good as Phillip Danault is defensively. You know, he's been in the league a long time and really honed his craft here. So Dvorak will get that role. I think he'll do a good job, but it theoretically on the defensive side is going to be a bit of a step back, I think. But offensively, I think he'll give you more. So that should offset each other, right? So we'll have to see overall how they work out. They signed Mike Hoffman as an unrestricted free agent. That should help the power play. That should also help their second or third line, depending on where they want to place all their wingers, and make them a little bit deeper, another scoring threat. So that will obviously help. They signed Matthew Perreault and Cedric Paquette. Those two guys can kind of replace your Eric Stahls, and your Corey Perry. Not the exact same kind of players, but Paquette is a veteran guy who could be a fourth line center. Perreault is a guy who can go up and down your lineup. So certainly like his addition. Different kind of player than Perry, but he can play a similar physical style, good forechecker, good skater, can kill penalties. So I see them both being useful players. Perreault more so than Paquette. I wouldn't be surprised if Paquette's a healthy scratch eventually, and they maybe work in a guy like Ryan Poehling a little bit more. From the back end, of course, you cannot replace Shea Weber. It's impossible, but they did the best they could, and they signed David Savard, coming off a Stanley Cup championship in Tampa. Of course, played with the Jackets for a long time. Savard's a really good right shot defenseman. Pretty good on both sides of the puck. More so in the defensive zone, but will give you a little bit of offense too. And like I said, you can't replace Weber, but based on what was on the market for a reasonable price, that's one of their better options. So to me, it was a good signing. And they bring back Chris Weidman from the KHL as well. Formerly played mostly with the Ottawa Senators, but then bounced around a bit after running into some issues. Goes over to the KHL and was their top defenseman there last year and is looking to revitalize an NHL career. It's believed he left a little bit of money on the table to stay in North America and rather than go back to the KHL. But Weidman is a smaller sized defenseman, but a good mobility, good puck mover, decent amount of offense. He could maybe be an option for a second power play unit, or if they have any other injuries with guys ahead of them, maybe. But they have other defensemen here that are likely going to get those opportunities first, like Jeff Petrie, like Romanoff, for example. So I don't know exactly where he fits, but he'll be a third pair guy to start. But overall, as far as what they've added, I do like it. Like the only difference here is, like I said, they're losing Weber, who they cannot replace. And otherwise, they have a decent amount of guys coming in. It's just going to be a different look. They're going to have to adjust their style here a little bit and kind of go from there. Now let's jump on to dailyfaceoff.com. They have a lot of really good options there for the depth charts that we're going to take a look at here. And I'll show you what they've projected here as their lineup. They have the top line being Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Mike Hoffman. We have a situation where the second line is going to be Christian Dvorak, Brendan Gallagher, and Jonathan Drouin. At least that's the way things are looking. Line 3 right now they have is Evans, Anderson, Toffoli. They have the fourth line is Perreault, Armia, and Lehkonen. Now, I can see this being a little different. I can see Toffoli playing with Suzuki and Caulfield, to be honest. A lot of this has to do with player ratings is how they have this done up here as well. But I think we'll put Toffoli with Suzuki and Caulfield, drop Hoffman down with Anderson and Evans. I like this second line. I think a guy like Drouin is a good fit for Dvorak. So to me, I know a lot of the guys that are more familiar with Dvorak and seen him play more. I mean, I'm quite familiar with Christian Dvorak, but where he plays in Arizona, I haven't seen him play as much as some players. And I know they say to have him matched up with a winger who's a good playmaking winger, a guy who can carry the puck a lot, and Drouin could do that, and Gallagher's a good fit there as well. Gallagher is the only remaining player from that Danault Gallagher-Tatar line, and he's going to have to find himself a new home. But to me, that makes a lot of sense. Your D pairs are likely going to be, now this is what they have. They have Edmondson, Petrie, Romanov, Savard, Sherratt, Weidman. I think they'll probably put Sherratt with Petrie myself, but we'll see how things go. Sherratt played a lot with Weber before. They may not, because Edmondson and Petrie actually did play together a fair bit, so they're already familiar with each other. So it's difficult to say how they do that. But they have 3 lefties, 3 righties. And, of course, in goal, you've got Carey Price and Jake Allen. No big surprise there. They have some special teams units here. Probably going to see Suzuki, Hoffman, Gallagher, Caulfield, Petrie, possibly as your number 1 power play unit. So to me, this is an interesting team. As far as rookies go, do they have any rookies that can make impact? And even though you may not think of it, Cole Caulfield technically is a rookie. I mean, he still qualifies, and he's going to likely be a contender for the Calder Trophy, in my opinion. Caulfield should have a full, solid year. He had a good experience in the playoffs, and I expect him to play solid top 6, if not top line minutes, pretty regularly now, and likely contribute in a big way and really have a major impact. He and Suzuki really were the drivers for this team offensively in the playoffs. So, you had even Josh Anderson, who scored some big goals, only had 5 goals entirely throughout the playoffs. Like I said, you didn't have Drouin in the lineup. Dvorak wasn't here. Hoffman wasn't here. Toffoli was a big producer, but not to the extent Suzuki and Caulfield was in the playoffs. They were kind of a one-line offensive show, really, those 3 guys. So we'll see what they do. Now, as far as projections, where I see them finishing here, I see the Montreal Canadiens being in the playoff picture, but they're going to be going back into a really tough Atlantic division. Now they're going to be battling with teams like Tampa and Florida and Toronto and Boston and Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo. Now, obviously, the other 3 teams lastly I mentioned there are not going to likely be too much of a threat for playoffs. I suspect Buffalo and Detroit to be at the bottom. Ottawa might be more in the conversation, but you're going to have really 5 teams, probably, maybe 6, depending on how much the Senators surprise us, battling for 4 spots, and it might not even be exactly 4 spots because we're going back to the old format here, right? So, but theoretically, I expect the Atlantic Division to probably be a little stronger than the Metro and the Eastern Conference. So, realistically, I think the Montreal Canadiens for regular season play are probably going to be battling for a 4th spot. To me, I think it's going to boil down to Montreal-Boston is how I see it right now. You get the defending Cup champions, Tampa. To me, don't really look all that weakened with what they've lost. And then you have a situation where the Florida Panthers are, they had an amazing year last year. They're only going to continue to get better. So to me, I expect them to be in the top 3. Then you get the high-powered Maple Leafs. And I don't understand Montreal beat Toronto in the playoffs. That's the thing, though, is I think Montreal is built for playoff hockey. So I do suspect if they can get there again that they will be a dangerous team and can do some damage. The only problem is getting there, to me, is going to be tougher than last year. If you look at the last 2 regular seasons, they didn't really fare well. Last year, they barely got into playoffs, and that was looking like the teams like Vancouver and Ottawa it got off the bat, just didn't really, they kind of did them some favors in a way. Calgary didn't do themselves any favors, and, it kind of made that spot right for the taking. The year before, they got in because it was expanded playoffs. They wouldn't have made it on the justified, normal format. So ultimately here, I think Montreal is still a really good team. It's not going to be any easy task to get back to the finals. Look at many of the other teams you've seen in the last 10 years that have made it to the finals. You think they're building something that's going to be big and long-lasting, and then they never get back. It's no guarantee. This is a really tough league to win in. And to me, like I said, I see them being in the playoff picture, likely making it, but it's not like they're going to blow this division away and be right at the top. But like I said, they're built for playoff hockey. To me, they have a big, solid group of blue liners. Without Weber, it's going to be a loss, but they have guys like Savard to hopefully fill the gaps. Hopefully guys like Petrie can continue to step up. Romanov can step up. You get Edmondson there, Sherratt. If they can continue to play like they did in the playoffs, that'll be a big help. And then you added some more scoring up front as well. You're maybe not quite as good defensively, but you got more offense. So, we'll see what happens in that regard. So I think they'll be in the mix, but it's not like they're going to be right at the top. But I would not want to mess with them come playoff time, just like last year, and see what they can do. So let me know your thoughts and predictions on the Montreal Canadiens 2021 edition here going into the 21-22 season. Let me know what your thoughts on all the moves they've made and whether or not you feel, or let me know your predictions on where you're going to think they're going to finish here for the upcoming season. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.